I've been following you for a hot second on Instagram, and I was just saying to you before we started recording, like every time I see you on video, I'm like, she is so fit. Like you are just so well put together, and like your message is so powerful. And I just feel like I sit there and just like, okay, Annalie, I'll do whatever you say.
Oh, thank you so much for that compliment. I'll take it on. I wish my daughter would do whatever I said, but yeah, thank you, babe.
Right, before we get into the episode, we do kind of a quick fire 10 before
love.
some like random questions just to like warm you up and get the audience knowing you a little bit better. So if you could be mistaken for any celebrity, who would you want it to be and why?
So I just want to say that someone sent an email yesterday saying that they thought I looked like Melania Trump.
I mean, she's beautiful.
She is beautiful. I was like, I don't know if you like me or not. I don't know how this is. So,
and also her dress sense is amazing.
Yeah. So, I mean, that wouldn't be my first choice, but I was like, she is a vibe. She feels quite unapologetic as well. I love, oh my God, Monica Bellucci.
Oh my God.
She's just sexy.
And so elegant.
Right.
And such a badass bitch. Like you know that she is not going to take anyone's shit. But
she
very
divorced
feminine with it.
Vincent Cassel.
Yeah.
I'm sure he was a delightful French lover. She was like, no more. Love her.
I'm done with you. I love that. Yeah, anyone Italian I'm into. If you could have one superpower, teleportation or time travel, which one would you pick and where would you go first?
My daughter and I talk about this all the time, 100% teleportation, and we would go to the beach in Antigua every time we're cold.
I love it. Just be like, shall we? Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
ding.
exactly.
Cocktail. Love that. I'm such a sun girl, born in August, so I'm like, put me in the sun anywhere. What is the weirdest job you've ever had, or the most random like side gig?
So I'd completely forgotten this, or I was so traumatized that I'd repressed it. But when I was at college, this is probably really inappropriate, but it turns out...
We did say there was nothing off limits.
Yeah. So when I was at college, the police, where I grew up in Woking, would pay students cash in hand to do lineups. And there was one, I can see your face. And there was one that
Just to be clear, we're talking criminal lineups, right?
So they needed extra people. It's like, well, we need a girl with dark hair. But there was one I remember, because you just turned up and it was great. You got like drinks money, like 100 quid back in the day. I'm 43, right? So that was a lot of money.
100 quid?
Right.
But there was great pay.
Yeah, depending on how long you were there. But there was one that I think really is quite inappropriate because they covered me in fake tan, and I had to, the decorator's suits, like the kind of zip up decorator suits, had to wear one of those, and actually they asked me to step forward, whoever it was. There was some kind of robbery for that one. So that is, I would say, the weirdest job.
I love that. And 100 quid.
Yeah.
I mean, I would have been like, I'm rich. we were talking before we started filming about all the random jobs that we've done. And I remember when I was on the door at nightclubs, like back in the day when I was at university, right? You just, do whatever you want to do. And I got approached to go and work in the Playboy Club, and they were like offering like £30 an hour at the time, which like when you're 18,
massive.
Was like, I'm rich.
Yeah.
I mean, I turned it down because I knew my dad would be absolutely furious if I did that. But I was like, 30 quid now. I could shop in like Harrods. Like, I'm rich. I love it. If you had to choose one animal as your lifelong sidekick, what would it be and why?
Oh, I think I have to say a cat, because I've got one. We rescued one and it's my daughter's favourite thing, and I think I'd feel disloyal if I didn't.
What's your cat's name?
We kept his name. He's called Milo.
Oh,
to be honest,
cute.
he's a bit of a bastard, and he loves her. But
But not you.
No, he's just
Even though
like,
you feed him and today's vet
do you know, he's just got really good boundaries. So love that for him.
We could all learn something from Milo. We used to have cats, and honestly, one of them was like the best cat ever. Like, you could sling him around your shoulder and he would just like fall asleep, and then the other one just clawed your face off every time you tried to touch it. I think they're very psychotic cats. What's your ultimate guilty pleasure food that you sneak in the middle of the night?
Ooh, well, we were talking about this just off air. It would be cheese. Like, people often say to me, what's your wellness routine? I'm like, Pilates and cheese. Honestly, I eat cheese
amazing,
every day. There's not a day of my life I don't eat cheese.
Protein. I'm here for it. What's your we've done that. What's one embarrassing thing that happened to you recently that made you laugh after?
Oh God, so people don't realize I'm really clumsy, like next level clumsy. And people like say, oh, you're really like well put together. That can't be true. So, I mean, I've cut my toe open on a yacht, like a really nice yacht, having a yacht day. There's me bleeding everywhere, like hopping around.
They're running around going,
I did it at the same trip. It was a friend's birthday trip. Who's the one that drops the bottle of like rosé in the middle of the villa on the floor, glass everywhere. Again, there's me, like bloody footprints. So yeah, always me.
I think that the more put together you are, the more clumsy you are.
I'm so clumsy.
We on my I think it was like my third date with my boyfriend. We went to it sounds very extravagant. I'm sure we'll dig into it at some point. But we went to Lisbon, in Portugal.
Oh, I love Lisbon.
And I am like very much, I'm a strong, independent woman. I can carry my own case down the stairs. And he's like, no, I'm carrying the stairs down the stairs. So when he was getting ready to leave, I was like, I'm going to sneak it down the stairs. So whatever. Of course, I fell down the full flight of stone stairs.
Yeah, I was going to say
on my
stone.
arm. It was horrendous. And then proceeded to spend the entire rest of the day with this like massive, like huge arm that went black. And it was, I'm sure I fractured it. But anyway, we love a clumsy girl. If you could text your 18-year-old self 3 words, what would you say?
It'll be okay.
I love that. Do you think more 18-year-olds need to hear that?
Yeah, I do. Because obviously you only have the 18 years of experience to apply to situations. You know, for you and I now, we've got like it or love it. You know, we've been through a lot of stuff. So you can apply these different learnings and lenses. I think you can feel quite disempowered with maybe because you're kind of transitioning at that age. You haven't got full autonomy. You know, often you don't own your own things. So you're reliant on caregivers, parents, whoever they may be. You're kind of still in maybe education. There's still systems that you kind of have to play a game in. And I always felt a little bit outside the lines, but they didn't feel that there was something available to me. I felt wrong. I felt ashamed a lot. So yeah, to sort of know as I know now that whatever's happening, it'll be okay, and believe that would have been really helpful.
I think a lot of people need to hear that, like regardless of their age. I think we'll dig into it anyway, but we said before we started recording, there's so many synergies in our stories. Yeah. And I think a lot of people think that what if the worst happens, and there's a lot of living in fear and living in anxiety because of things that are happening or could happen. And I don't think people understand that actually everything is figure outable. Yeah. Like you can have a missed mortgage payment, you can have a maxed out credit card, you can be bankrupt and still be fine. Yeah. Like you can have a divorce, you can have you will be like, yeah, sure it hurts, and yeah, sure you definitely get some bold ass lessons from it, but it will be fine and everything is figure outable. But we'll dig into that in more depth in the podcast. Do you want to build your personal brand but don't know where to start? Or you want to start posting content and have no idea what to say to attract your ideal audience? Sign up to Get Clout. It's a generative AI platform that delivers you a personal branding social content strategy and tells you exactly what to post, where to post it to get the outcomes that you want to get from your social media. Go to www.clout.com/membership to join 565 people today who are also building their personal brand. If you can invite 3 famous people, dead or alive, to dinner, who would you invite and what would you serve?
Ooh, Robert Greene, the author of 48 Laws of Power, because I just think he's incredible. I mean, I'm tempted to have no one else there. I'd love to have an audience just with him. Who else would I have? I'd have Robert Greene, and I'd have 2 of my best mates there, Sarah and Kirsty, because we'd have a hilarious, amazing time. And I would serve champagne and a lot of cheese.
I love that.
I'm not going to mess around here. I think he'd be an absolute laugh. I think he'd have brilliant stories. I think, you know, I would want to have that opportunity to really engage and share it with people I love.
I love that. I read something recently and it's like really stuck in my brain that like no 90-year-old wishes they had fewer, crazier stories. Yeah. I'm like, I live my entire life for a dinner party anecdote. I want to get to 90, be surrounded by all my great grandchildren and be like, you know what Nanny did when she was like 35? Well, she did this.
Exactly.
And I just love it.
Yeah, I live for that. They all refer to me as being quite unhinged, and I'm pretty proud of that.
Yeah, absolutely. More chaos, the better. If you could instantly master one completely random skill, what would it be?
Oh, I'd love to languages. So my daughter and I at the moment are doing bloody Duolingo, that owl that gets stressed with you. Yeah. And we're trying to do Spanish together, which is cute, but I think it's wonderful. And I'm in so much admiration for people that can master a language. So I would love to master Spanish. I think that would be fantastic. Or just have the art and ability of mastering a language.
It was why Spanish?
I think we've just traveled quite a lot there. And actually one of my friends speaks Spanish fluently. And so she sort of got Amber quite interested and engaged. I wanted to kind of not push her, but just keep up with that while she was enjoying it, while it's fun. Yeah. And I just think it's quite universal, really, that you could apply it. And I
think also once you've learned Spanish, it's probably pretty easy to learn like Italian or French or whatever. Yeah. They're all steeped in Latin, aren't they? I did Latin at school. I can remember nothing from it. It was the most useless topic ever. What's the weirdest thing you've searched on Google in the past month?
Ooh, God, tell you what, and it's very relevant to where we are right now, plague pits. Where the plague pit? There you go. That's not what you were expecting.
This is a plague pit.
It is. Like Charterhouse Street is above one of the biggest plague pits.
No way.
Yes. Because so this is random, but here you go. So I was going somewhere near Essex Road Station, and every time I go there, we just sort of see a lovely person getting some my teeth sorted out, and love Techie, my orthodontist, and I was like, I just feel really sad whenever I'm here, like overwhelmingly sad. Wow. And I was like, I wonder if anything happened here. And sure enough, under Islington Green, biggest plague pit
Oh
that
my
there
God.
was. And then here, because I obviously got into this now and got obsessed. So when the plague happened and you had to bring out your dead and where did you take them? This Charterhouse Street, Charterhouse Square, one of the biggest plague pits. So I'm your girl.
Oh my God.
I'm your girl. I know where they are.
That's crazy. So just rewind. You felt you were sad.
I
Talk
have
me
felt
through
this.
that.
Yeah. So this probably makes no sense, but I'm here to own it. So every time I went there was just this feeling of I said to my boyfriend, I was like, oh, I just have this horrible, overwhelming feeling of sadness. And I would really dislike to die there. And he was like, well, sure. Why would you want to die anywhere? And I was like, no, there's something here, something a bit spooky. There's something doesn't feel good. And I decided, I was like, something must have happened here. There must have been something, even just maybe where the architecture's dating from, because obviously if that had happened and it was decimated, you build from that time. And sure enough, I also like being right. So sure enough, when I Googled it, I was like, ha. I mean, I'm clinging on to this now just to be right. But I was like, oh, I knew it. And yeah, those are where the big plague pits were.
Have you had any other feelings like that before?
Yes, quite spooky stuff.
Yeah.
Quite often with clients, I might pick up on something where I'll always talk to them about any injuries they've had or accidents. And I've had to say to a few people, look, I'm really sorry, but right now I'm sitting here and I feel like I've got a pair of hands around my throat. And then sure enough, they were assaulted.
Yeah.
Or I might get a very painful feeling somewhere else in my body, like my stomach. And yes, they'd had a bad surgery or something like that. So sometimes, not always.
That's remarkable, and it goes to show how in tune you are with people as well. It's funny. I've had instances like that. I never forget. I was living in this flat with my ex-husband in Birmingham, and I always felt like there was someone there, always. And it's not in like a ghost way, or like it just felt like, when you feel like someone's behind, like is watching you, and then you turn around, there's no one there. I always had that feeling in the flat, always, and it didn't feel scary or anything like that. It just felt like a presence was there. But my ex-husband didn't feel it. It was just me. And anyway, what we were talking about it in the car, just randomly. I was like, have you ever felt blah, blah, blah? And he was like, no. And then about 3 weeks later, he was like, when you said the other day, like I felt it too. And he was like, I was walking around the house and I felt like you were at home with me, but you weren't. Anyway, we Googled it and there were 2 girls that were murdered in that flat. And as soon as we Googled it, disappeared.
Yeah.
It was almost like they wanted people to know that had happened. It was giving me goosebumps talking about it. Like, it's just so strange.
Yeah, I've had quite a lot of things like that have happened. And I've learned now just kind of lean into, this, you call it serendipity or synchronicity. Or my daughter came home from school years ago. She was 5 and with a feather. And she said, oh, mummy, this is from your mummy's mummy. And we hadn't done that yet. We hadn't really done like death and people that had died. And that was my maternal grandmother, who I loved so much. And I was like, oh, right. And she said, yeah, she wanted you to have it. And I was like, okay. And I had this feeling, you have this feeling. And she's like, where is she now? And I said, well, she's in heaven with Diego, the friend's dog that had gone to heaven, that we'd done heaven. And drove home. And I just, you just have this feeling. Drove home and looked through my photographs. My grandmother passed when I was pregnant with Amber. And I was on baby moon at the time in Dubai. And I knew the moment she passed. She'd been really poorly for a long time. So it was kind of expected, but I had this feeling. I took a photo of the sky and then an hour later the text came through saying she's passed. And that was kind of spooky. The day that Amber brought home this feather was 5 years to the day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And you're like, right, okay. That's kind of unexplained.
I mean, there's so many unexplained. It's giving me goosebumps.
So I like that. I just thought, I don't fear it, put it that way.
Yeah.
I feel like it's just a little wink or a nudge from somewhere, someone, whatever we want to call it.
Universe.
Just going, all is good, babe.
Yeah, I love that. So for the people that don't know you, we've just kind of like gone straight in. Give us an overview.
So yeah, apart from plague pits and witchery, so
and being the most fabulous dressed woman on Instagram.
Thank you, darling. So yeah, I'm a performance coach and trauma therapist is really my sort of day-to-day job. So I see individuals, or I work with a lot of elite athletes in all kind of sports, very famous people as well that we would all know, to work through traumatic events that have affected them in whatever way. So I work with EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization reprocessing, which is a lovely technique that I learned. But prior to that, worked in corporate, had a huge burnout, which led me onto this path of kind of learning to heal myself. I have a large Instagram account now. I've just finished my book, which I think
comes out in May.
It is. It comes out in May next year. You're getting it's called Unapologetic. You're getting an exclusive here today, which is really exciting. So that's just gone. I've literally just finished the drafts with my editor. So
and don't underestimate, like that is an absolute graft writing a book, isn't it? Like I think the thing is, like everyone goes, yeah, I could probably write a book, and then you write it, and then you don't realize that there's every other thing after that. Like it's the manuscript thing, it's the editing, it's the thing. It's like it's endless.
Yeah,
so congratulations, because I think everyone underestimates actually what the work involved in writing a book is.
And it was especially hard. I mean, anyone doing it will know that I hadn't done it before. I'm learning an entire new technique, which is exciting. I really love learning, but you're doing that around single mumming, life, day job, because trying to make all of this stuff fit in as well, and then also trying to deliver on the gram and kind of keep the content flowing and just continue to help people, really.
So you were in corporate, you have a big burnout. What was the catalyst to that point? Because I feel like a lot of people, I was having this conversation with a client the other day, because they really want to talk about burnout because they're kind of an expert in that field. And I said, well, I think everyone thinks burnout is this like big hospitalization type thing. Yeah. And actually quite often it can, present in other ways, like not being able to sleep, or like weight loss, weight gain. I would say, I don't say I've full burnout, but I've definitely been on the flirting line with it at least 3 or 4 times. One of which I reckon if I hadn't stopped, I probably would have ended up in hospital. But the other kind of times it's presented have been when I feel really unfocused. Like I just can't, it's almost like you've got smoke in front of your eyes and like nothing feels like, it just feels numb.
Yeah.
So how did it feel for you?
Yeah, I love that description because that's exactly how it feels. I mean, there's often 2 different stress responses. There's the sympathetic, which is the way I describe it is you've had 6 espressos and you're like, your heart's racing. The way that I tend to respond to stress is more parasympathetic, which is I'll leave my keys in the front door. I'll ding the back of my car on my own driveway that I drive in and out of every day. Like things, as you say, brain fog, like you can't quite get to an answer that you should, like recalling an information, forgetting something, like it's like my daughter, like things that you just would never normally forget.
And speech, I found that. So I'd be doing talks and I'd be like mumbling over my words and not get the right sentence out, not even get the right word out sometimes as well.
You're just not there. And burnout in sort of my world, or a way of talking about it is, we can go into survival zone, which is you can be triggered by stuff, right? And that's stress. And sometimes stress is good stress as well. We stress a muscle in the gym. That's how we build it. You get stressed by an email coming in, or like me being late, or the train delays today. Those sorts of things could be really stressful to you. But we can move back across what we call high performance zone and renewal. But when you end up in burnout, the critical thing for people to know is you get sent there. That is not a place that you choose to pop into. You didn't like, I'm a bit burnt out right now, I'm going to that is a place that when you haven't listened to either your body's signals or your mind or whatever it is begging you for rest, as you said, to stop, an intervention, you will be sent to burnout. And there's an appropriate time to be there, which is when we're grieving. That is a very similar space. It's the kind of the similar, like just being disconnected in all the ways we just described. That's the appropriate response to grief. Not for everyone, but if you find yourself there, of course you're going to be disconnected and not feeling yourself and not able to perform as you would. But if you're finding yourself, as you say, either teetering or in that space again, the likelihood is you haven't been living or honouring your needs. And so for me, it was, I now understand, childhood trauma that I was trying to outrun, making myself financially secure, because that's a way of me never having to go back there to the threat, to the pain, which I did very successfully. But in doing so, I landed up successful, in inverted commas, with the Range Rover in the right postcode and all the stuff. And I was so unhappy and I was so out of alignment. I always say I was not in the role of my soul where I was meant to be. But you get there and you're like, but this is my job title and like, that's my degree and I've worked towards all of these things. I've done a master's. I've got, I've become really successful in this niche part of a business and an industry. I know it's hurting me, but what am I going to do? Like there isn't here's the golden answer in this envelope, open it, you'll be happy forever and successful. You have to start again, or you have to start at the same time as something else. You'll be okay. Like it'll be okay. That saying, I wish I'd known. You just have to start taking some steps towards it. Because people ask me a lot, they're like, well, what do I do? Like, I would change if I knew what would make me happy. I would leave if I knew I'd have something on the other side. And you're like, but that isn't what life is like. You've just got to, if you know you're in so much pain, and if it is harming you and maybe key relationships around you, got to make a change there.
And so so you get to that point, brain fog, whatever. Did you know it was burnout at the time?
I wouldn't have probably known it by name at the time. No, I think I had a lot of shame about it. I thought I'm looking at colleagues, other people and being like, well, they're coping. Why can't I? What's wrong with me? And I was in this organization that was very sort of, it was before Me Too. all of this in construction and the way before flexible working. And I mean, when I look at it now, I wonder that bits didn't fall off me earlier, to be honest. And I obviously had a lot of trauma in the system that I hadn't learned to process, or, you know, how to heal my nervous system. Like, I was going for every test under the sun, thinking it might be, honestly, probably also wishing it was a gluten intolerance, because then that was a quick fix, a Band-Aid, sort it out, and I could just carry on like running myself into the ground, because that's an easier answer. But of course, I wasn't intolerant to gluten. I was intolerant to my life. And I had to really face that. So I had a guided visualization session with a really good friend of mine who had just started coaching. And at the time, that's like 14 years ago now. It was super woo and weird. Like, no one was doing it. It wasn't like Wendy Rhodes had been being her big sexy self in Billions and everyone wanted to coach. It was like, dream catchers and hemp trousers. That was the perception. But it was so profound, this visualization. And again, I saw a lot in that has absolutely come true that I could not have foreseen. And I had never connected into that place. And of course, you know, like when you're in your subconscious, there is no noise. Like you're not sort of drowned out with the can'ts, or your inner critic can't get hold of you there. And that was when I realized I was living from this place of fear, survival zone, and what I would now term as burnout, absolutely. And what that session gave me was some hope, because I just for the first time could feel there was something hopeful, that I didn't need to have every single answer, because I would give anything not to feel how I felt.
You said a minute ago that maybe your burnout was your lifestyle and like your life, but also was kind of unpacking a lot of trauma that you hadn't dealt with. Do you want to take us back to that time and like everything that's happened since then?
Sure. So I grew up in a very violent household where my father was very violent towards me, but my mother colluded. So it was always my fault. And therefore there's no safe person or safe place. Like my grandmother, we talked about earlier, that story of the feather was my haven, and would go on the weekends and I would be safe. But otherwise it was not, and I was always wrong, and you know, that kind of sort of feeling in household where you grew up afraid basically all the time, but not without a sort of compass as to what was right. I just was wrong often.
Always.
Yeah. Without being told, you know, because I said so, those sorts of things, without any kind of information. Did pretty well at school, and then needed to get out basically. So making myself financially autonomous was really important. Like, I don't have a degree. I have a master's. I don't have an undergrad, because I didn't want to go to university because it meant staying at home longer. That was unsafe for me. I had to get out of there as quickly as possible, which meant being financially autonomous, and then did a master's while I was working to make sure that I was kind of aligned with my peers and those sorts of things. But I was running. Like, when I look back now, I understand that I was sprinting through everything, just trying to get away from this thing. And that's where you have like huge imposter syndrome. You know, something good would be happening and I would feel, honestly, like the fraud police would turn up at my door of my really lovely flat in Putney at the time and be like, who do you think you are? Get back to the police lineups in Woking. You know, like, who the fuck do you think you are? You don't deserve any of this. Because I'd never stopped to celebrate anything, and I probably hadn't stopped to understand, or hadn't been given the skills to understand, that I was in this like survival and I was running.
It's so funny, you know, there's so many people that I've had on this podcast who are on paper successful, right? They've got, like you said, the bright postcode, they've got the Range Rover, they've got the really successful business, like however you want to define that. And almost all of them have had, whether they admitted it on camera or off camera, some kind of trauma that has given them a chip on the shoulder that has meant they are where they are. And I can definitely relate to that. Like I've had, when I was much younger, some not particularly nice things happen. And I think that wasn't my parent. My parents are amazing. I'm very, very fortunate to have a very, very close relationship with them. But it definitely pushed me to be like, fuck you. I'm going to just go and like thrive, not because of you, but despite you, and like go on. And that meant that same thing. Every single thing was like, right, well, I need to get the flat the quickest. I need to get the car the quickest. I need to get promoted the quickest. I need to be, you know, build the £1 million business the quickest. Like, and it's always ding, 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 ding. And then you get to a point where you look around and you are the most successful you've ever been and the most unhappy.
Yeah.
Like, what happens next?
Yeah, completely. I think that is a bit of the dark night of the soul. I think most of us kind of, as you say, you're doing the things, you're ticking the boxes that we're supposed to, that we're told to, that are going to validate us, we think, but really they're the pursuit, they're the material measures of this world, you know, consumerism that we're told.
It's so mad though, isn't it? Because so many people are saying what we're saying, like having been there, done that, and be like, guys, there is no, it's like, it's a trap.
Yeah,
like
it's a trick.
It's a trick. Yeah, right. It's like, but probably to get us to pay more taxes.
Yeah.
Like that is the trap. And yet we still all do it. We're still like, oh wait, I want that shiny thing. Like the feeling of buying a new car lasts like 7 days, and then you're on, I want a new one. I saw it like it's mad. Why do we do that?
I mean, there's so much psychology. And I mean, I'm sure you've read The Psychology of Money, and I recommend it to so many people. I wish I'd read that when I was in my 20s. I wish I'd read that book, because then I think he peels away some of the layers so beautifully that the only thing that's important is having freedom. Yeah. So freedom to, we were talking off air about taking our kids away, you know, and like that to me is the most important thing.
Cash flow rather than like the big part at the end.
Completely.
Or we said that actually earlier. We were talking about, I was saying cash flow is the most important thing to me.
Or being like a dowager of Downton Abbey rattling around my house, you know, like for what? In the right postcode and all the rest of it. As long as I'm safe, as long as me and my daughter are safe, as long as, you know, I can enjoy my life and live. But there's definitely unpicking and unlayering a lot of this conditioning, and it comes from so early. You know, there would obviously messaging growing up even that either work is hard or money is hard to come by, or it's hard to hold on to money. So we often have all of these intrinsic inner beliefs as well that we need to work through.
They say from 7.
Yes.
So if your mum or dad say like, oh, we can't afford that, like we can't do that, that starts wiring your brain to think that money is scarce and therefore hold on to it and feel really worried to spend. Like, do you know what I mean? Whereas people who are kind of, it's abundance. It's, I hate saying abundance because when people hear the word abundance, they go, oh, whatever. But like, it is that mindset of like, you know, you can figure it out always. Those people tend to be more quote unquote financially free and successful because they believe that they'll always work it out. And so they do. Because thoughts are very powerful things.
Yeah, completely. And like around 7 is also the time that you become emotionally autonomous from your parents. Like before that, if you were getting upset, your kids would be like, you know, when they're younger. When they, generally speaking, turn past 7, they start having their own emotional experience. They're taking on these messages and sometimes obviously internalizing that into their own experience. So yeah, I think we just have a lot of stuff, and then we're given these poster celebrities or whatever it might be to kind of follow, or success stories. And yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with liking nice things. Like I like nice things, and you know, I work very, very hard. And like you, I'm glad I have the drive that I have. I think it would always be a part of who I am. You know, writing a book, there'll be stuff after that. I'm not just going to sit back and be like, no, I'm sitting in a house in Tuscany and don't know, doing watercolors. That's not my it's not my plan for myself. Like I'm very much about taking everything out of life, but I'm very aware now of the reality. And like you, I've got some self-made billionaire clients, you know, the reality of what really makes me happy, and that's what's important.
And that's the most important thing, isn't it? And it's so cliche. And I think when people hear like focus on being happy, they're like, whatever. Like I'd rather cry in a Range Rover than a thing. And it's like, actually, no, you wouldn't. Like it really sucks. Like I remember last year I've said this on the podcast before, but last year was financially the best year we've ever done as a business. Like we smashed it, had amazing clients, did whatever. And it was hands down the worst year of my life. Like the worst. And it just goes to show that like you can have everything like on paper, like, you know, you're flying business class and going to Dubai and like but actually inside you're just like, what the fuck am I doing? And I'm very, very grateful. And I wonder in many respects whether it's because I have had a lot of therapy. I'm very grateful that I came to the conclusion in like September last year that I was like, fuck this. Like absolutely fuck this. I don't want this anymore. I was actually very close to being like, I don't even know if I want to run the business in the way that I want to run it anymore, because I don't want the pressure of like having to reach that next million, that next 2 million, that next whatever. Like another £2 million in my company bank isn't going to make me 2 million times more happy. It's going to make me 2 million times more stressed, 2 million times less able to see sports days and whatever. And so this year it's been like, we were just joking earlier, I've been away somewhere every single month this year, even if it was just for a long weekend, because I'm like, fuck it, life's for living, and if I can, why not? Like, and I've been to every sports day, I've been to every play, and I've never been able to do that before. And I think a lot of people we were saying earlier, like get to the end of their life, no one goes, I wish I'd made more money. Everyone says, I wish I'd spent more time doing things that make me happy. There's not a single person that regrets working more. Yeah. You know?
I love that. I love what you're saying. And I think as a parent as well, there can be some kind of, I don't know, there could be pressures. I'm glad that like you, I'm glad I've been through what I've been through. I'm glad that I've had a complete, you know, by choice or not, you know, a lot of the things that happen, divorce, as you have, all those sorts of things that, you know, some people really do kind of judge you, or I think they expect, I say this a lot, no offense to Bowden, but like I say, like, you know, I think they expect me to go to Seed and start shopping at Bowden. It's like, absolutely fucking not. Like I'm the woman that I was always meant to be, and I'm going to become more and more powerful and excited and engaged and purposeful, and I want that to be the example to my daughter. And if that means that I maybe don't always fit in, like say into expectations at certain things at school that my daughter's at are actually all brilliant and lovely, but you know, I appreciate that it's not maybe standard.
I'm the black sheep too.
Yeah, or been seen before, and I make no apology for that. You know, I'm happy. That means my daughter gets the absolute best mummy she can with me feeling like myself. And I've just got a lot better at knowing now, you know, what's going to tip me off balance or not. And I love what you said there, because you just talked about choosing freedom for yourself, freedom to be with the kids, freedom to take yourself away and refresh yourself. And everyone, your business, your family, everyone's going to benefit from that much 100%.
More. 100%. And I think actually, particularly when mums do this, and I'd love to dig into the mum co-parenting divorce conversation, because I've never even spoken about mine really on camera, and I know we've had very similar experiences, so I think we can have some synergies. But with the I've lost my train of thought now. What were we just saying? Co-parenting. We'll get edited out. No, before that.
Black sheep.
Not fitting in the mums, like why do mums act a certain way?
I think a lot of people, particularly mums, spend a lot of their life living up to this expectation of like, I need to look this way, I need to act this way, my kids need to do this, my kids need to do that, I need to have them in ballet and swimming and this and this and this, and if I don't do those things, then I'm not a good mum. I don't do good mum activities. I'm not there at every single fucking PTA meeting and doing this and doing that, but when I show up, my kids, like, I show up. Do you know what I mean? And I think if you can define what being a good parent or a good friend or a good partner or a good wife, a good husband looks like to you in the relationships that you're in, that is ultimately what you should be benchmarking, not what Susie down the road does, because what Susie down the road does might actually be making her miserable.
Yeah, totally. And all I can say is I have grown-ups in my office, you know, adults, every day talking about the shit that fucked them up in their childhood.
Yeah.
And I'm just trying not to do that to her. Yeah. So there are going to be days when, like, I might travel next week, for example, and, you know, trying to, as you'll know, can you do this? Can you cover this night? I'm going to miss Even's song. Like, does that, you know, do you know what? But I'm going to make some decent cash for us. We've got holiday half terms coming up. Like, I'm going to be doing some really cool, engaging work, helping someone that needs it. Like, we're going to have...
because you're loving what you do, you're going to be the best mum ever.
Exactly. And that's what I mean. She gets the best version of me. And that's what's important. And I think, again, we were talking about, like, what does success look like? I think that you do just get a lot of, we'll have to do this, and there's this on, and this drinks, and this thing, and this thing. And if I don't do that, then I won't be included. Or, you know, will she not be invited to things if I'm not showing up to things? And there's just kind of, again, no sort of benchmark of what's really important there, I think. And yeah, I don't want to slate any women, because I think it's a big challenge trying to juggle all the pieces. And I think it is very easy to become, like, perhaps look to comparison because you don't have that guidance. I remember the very first, when just after I'd had her, and went to one of those bloody awful monkey music classes. Did you ever do that? Horrendous.
I went to one NCT and I was like, absolutely
it was
not.
Absolute. And I remember, you know, because you finish work and then you go on mat leave quite soon to when you have the baby. So, I mean, in the wholeness of time, it was probably 2 months since I'd finished work, maybe had the baby, and then you're like, you know, just about ready to sort of emerge into the world, like just about confident enough. And I remember walking down the road being like, what are you doing? You know, like, what are you... I just felt so alien and so uncomfortable and really vulnerable. And obviously I'm doing this for her. But yeah, I think it's really difficult to suddenly force yourself into a world that you don't have
any experience in / want to be in.
Right. Maybe it's just not for you.
Yeah, no, it definitely wasn't for me. And it's funny, actually, I was talking about this at, I love David Lloyd, by the way. And like, if David Lloyd wants to sponsor this podcast, you can definitely do that. But I spend every weekend there because it's like, kids can go into kids club, I can go into the sauna, gym, great, fantastic. But we see the same, obviously, families there every week because they all do the same thing. And I was speaking to one of the mums the other day, and we were talking about exactly that. It's like, what are you doing this all for? Like, if we're all doing the same things, why are we doing it? We're doing it because we want other mums to think that we're doing a good job, or we want other people to think we're doing a good job, not because we actually want to do it. I don't care anymore. I'm just like, I'm not going to go to that. It sounds like really fucking boring. And I'd much rather be like bowling with my kids or something. Like,
the best thing in my parenting journey was lockdown. Boo, we can't talk about it. But it was because I think before that I was a little bit in that hamster wheel. I was going through the divorce. And I think you start doing what you should, in inverted commas, what I should have done, which is the whole...
good mum thing.
Right, there's this coming up, there's this go and see Santa here, there's book this thing, book it 8 months in advance because you have to get that slot of this certain thing, or you're a terrible parent, even though they're like 2 or whatever, I won't remember. But I was definitely in that kind of hamster wheel, and also, I think, in a sense, not disconnected from Amber, but not anywhere near as connected as we are now. I think I was almost doing the things rather than being with her in that way, and actually, trying to make fun out of, let's pick a meal to have outside today, or, you know, we're homeschooling, let's go pick some different leaves. And kind of, we were obviously forced to just have so much time together one-on-one without any other things to do. And it was the best thing that could have happened for our dynamic. And so coming out the other side of it, I am much more like, doesn't sound like fun, doesn't sound like us, don't mind if I'm making it up my own way, this is kind of what we're doing, this is how we're carving it out. But it gave me the confidence, I would say, to do that, having had that time with her, away from the noise.
Going back just before we kind of dig into the divorce and parenting and stuff, going back to, you were talking about how everyone, and you said there, you know, big reason of your motivation, your parenting style is to like not fuck Amber up, because that's, you know, so many people or whatever. There's a really good, there's a really famous poem by Philip Larkin called This Be the Verse, and it starts off, they fuck you up, your mum and dad, they don't mean to, but they do. And I genuinely believe that we all get fucked up in some capacity by someone in our lives. And I think it's often the trauma and the pain that we go through that makes us like the best humans ever. Because I think I was saying this to my boyfriend this morning, it's really, really hard to know what love is and to know what care is and to know what happiness is if you also don't know what pain is and darkness and trauma and all of those things. But how can one, if they're listening to this, being like, I really relate to the brain fog piece that you were saying earlier, and I feel like, you know, your story really resonates with me. How can you unfuck your life or start to unpick it at least?
So I want to give some things that are useful to people. Strip the engine back. That is the best piece of advice I can give you. Have a look at all of the things that, like, what is absolutely essential? What do you have to do today? Like, you have to get them off to school. You have to get a certain piece of work done or a couple of emails. Be really, really clear on everything that you absolutely must. If not, the wheels fall off. Do not, I should. That's really important. That's a big distinction. Anything that you think that you should, write a list. And that's often for other people. Because when you look at it, it'll be like, I should do something for the bake sale. I should attend that event. I should go to so-and-so's party on Friday. I haven't seen them in 6 months. I should check in with my family. I should go and get that gift, whatever it might be. Write that list and be really, really critical and have a look, and then look at it again with the lens of, what do I want to do? And with that, I mean, if you're struggling and suffering, what would make you feel better? If none of those things are going to make you feel better, we put it into the later base. You know, in coaching, call it the parking lot. So hold it there, and you can come back to that in any time that you want, that massive list. You know, you can check in with that friend again in a month when you've got all your energy back, if you want. But so stripping back the engine is really important, just to get into what are the absolute essentials that you must do. Now, to support that as best you can, I think what happens is you start feeling like you're really, really out of control. Like you've got no control over your life. Yeah. And then you get overwhelmed.
Inside Out 2 character, have you seen? The anxiety that just they can't stop because they're just spiraling. And
for me, when I get mega stressed, I dissociate. So that's when I'll leave the keys in the door, and I just can't. Like, I can't. It'd just be like, I literally just can't even reply to a message. You know, it's just like, I just can't. I've got so much I'm doing right now. So strip the engine. Shoulds versus wants, absolute essentials. Get that done to start with, so it becomes more manageable. Then the second thing is to look at what are the elements you can control. I can control what I put in my mouth. Maybe add some greenery to the cheese plate. You know, I can control how I move my body.
Put a bit of orange in the air fryer.
Exactly. I can control how I move my body. And maybe right now it's not a good thing to overjack my system, that my adrenals are all over the show. Maybe it's not the time to go and, I don't know, do a CrossFit class. Maybe it's the time to go and do something more nurturing, that you sort of feel like, oh, shit, you know, we were talking about it. Oh, work out harder and do this more. And like, right now I'm on the edge. So let's just work at how I can pull my energy back. If you're not sleeping, that's the foundation of everything. Try and work on the conditions that you know are helping you there. So get into the absolute fundamentals, but you have to free up time for yourself. And the other thing I want to say that I think people struggle with, and maybe why we find ourselves there, it certainly was my experience. There is a huge difference between being selfish and undertaking an act of self-care. So if you're being selfish, you are acting in your own interests at the detriment of somebody else. So I'm going to take your shoes, going to look really nice, and leave you without, for example. I don't want you to look like that. If I'm acting in an interest of self-care to nurture myself first, that means I'm going to be best able to care for people that I love and who are important to me. But we have this horrible, again, sort of conditioning that by putting those needs first, like on lockdown again, like it became so important for me to do this yoga class. It was online. It was my one piece of sort of community and fun. They'd play house music. It was called Buddha Beats. It was amazing. It kept me sane. It was wicked. Really good house music. You know, almost like a party on the mat. It was at 7:30, 3 times a week. I protected that. Now, sometimes my daughter was not up for going to bed at that moment. She had to. So there may be sometimes she was still awake and I went downstairs, or she ended up on the sofa with the one-eyed nanny, the iPad, you know, and slummy mummy, fine. But those 3 hours on that mat with that group and that music kept me going and made me joyful. So that you could be like, what a selfish person doing that. She wasn't ready to go to sleep that night, or you rushed her bedtime, or she was there past her bedtime. No, that was essential for me, which meant it was essential for her.
It made you the best mum ever.
Completely.
I completely agree with that. I always think when and I think it's not just a mum thing, it's not just a woman thing, it's an everyone thing.
Definitely.
It's the should versus must. And I think you can probably transcend that beyond feeling burnt out as well. Like I'm so glad that and I was smiling as you were talking there, because yesterday I was looking at my things that I should do before I go on vacation tomorrow. And I was looking at it going, oh my God, like how am I going to get all of this stuff done? And I was like, I don't have to do any of this stuff. Like none of this stuff is a have to do. This is a should do.
Yep.
And I can do it when I get back.
Yeah,
like,
I love that.
It's not a huge deal. And I think a lot of us spend a huge amount of time thinking that if we don't do the things that we should do, that we're somehow going to be a bad person. People aren't going to love us as much. And kind of coming back to what we were saying about trauma earlier, a lot of the actions I think adults take is through seeking validation from other people, because maybe you didn't get the validation or the emotional needs met as a child, and so you seek that in other people. So by doing these actions, you're getting a pat on the back, which then gives you the dopamine you need to feel good about yourself. But then that repeats a cycle of, well, I therefore need to keep doing these things for someone to make me feel loved. And actually what you should focus on is loving yourself, like you said with the yoga.
I love what you've said there, because there's such a common theme that I notice, which is exactly what you just named, that people do not feel worthy of unconditional love exactly as they are right now. Oh, I need to lose 10 pounds first. Oh, I haven't had a wax. Let me just finish this project. Wait till I get my bonus. We need to have that holiday. You know, whatever.
Everyone does that, don't they? Like even with like I'll be happy. When I just.
Yeah.
And you'll get to those points and then you go, oh, but I also need to. And it's like this.
Yeah, I've got to fix the bathroom. Yeah, there's always, but people have this sort of, exactly so there's this feeling of I'm not worthy of unconditional love exactly as I am today. And then there's the feeling of probably having been rewarded. There's a good girl. Oh, you've tidied up your room. Thank you, good girl. Yeah. Oh, you did really well. You're a good girl. You know, or they're probably, and the same for boys. You know, there probably has been rewards on achievements, numbers, sports, whatever it might be. And so we get into this kind of conditioning again of being a human doing rather than a human being. And it's a bloody good way of avoiding your feelings, because there's always something to do. There's always something to do.
It's funny. I remember a few years ago when I think my daughter was probably 4, because I remember my son was very, very small. He was a toddler, so he would have been 2, so she would have been about 4. And I remember watching this video, and it was talking about this kind of childhood trauma and like, why do people do to hide their feelings? Men are very good at that as well. Like keep nailing the next bonus so that we don't have to deal with like all the bullshit that we've got over there, which is manifesting itself in other ways. We'll dig into that in a second. Ollie, our producer's laughing. His mum's a psychologist, so he knows all of this stuff. But yeah, we get into this, and I was watching this video, and it was saying that they were talking to, I think it was like a live coaching session, and this person was explaining like, why do they keep having to do this? Why do they keep getting to this point? And I just need to, and they'd get to the need to, and then they'd still feel numb. There would be no kind of next, euphoria that they were looking for. And the psychologist said to them, were you rewarded for things as a child? And they said, yeah. Like my mum used to put all of my artwork on the fridge and whatever. And they said, that's why you feel like that, because you were only ever told that you were enough when you'd painted a picture, or when you'd done good maths, or when you'd whatever. And so your mum rewarded you rightly or wrongly. Like she was just doing the thing that good mums do.
Definitely.
She was giving you a gold star for doing the painting. And she said, but the painting on the fridge just fucked you up.
Completely. And then there's a lot of people that grew up in households that were violent or abusive, whereby the only time you were not in pain or scared was if you achieved. You know, it's maybe the only time you didn't get.
Do you think that's why you got really good grades?
Yeah. I think it was that.
Perfectionist.
I think honestly it was more about getting out of there. I think it was more that I could see a path that if I got certain grades and could then therefore, it was honestly just kind of it'll be okay. It was like, what's enough? So what's enough for me to get a GCSE? What's enough for me to get A level? What's enough, therefore, for me to get this job? How hard do I have to work at this job to earn this much money? Because this much money means I can move out. It was just that. It was an absolute, how can I get myself out of here as quickly as possible, really.
Do you have a relationship with them now?
No.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want them anywhere near my daughter.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of people that think that they need to have relationships with people because they're family. And actually, you don't need to have a relationship with anyone that impacts your mental health negatively or physical.
I mean, I'll speak to it. So I think that for a while I tried, and for quite a long time I tried, and it just became, every time I was due to see them, it would impact me so negatively for weeks. It was never discussed. You could never discuss it. There would be my mother's a covert narcissist, so she's always a victim. You cannot have a conversation. There is no accountability. And it just became this source of it was really fake for me as well, like twice a year, birthdays and Christmas. It became and like I say, my life would be so negatively impacted by it. And then having Amber, I think you could probably speak to this as well. I know men can too, but there's just something kicked into me that was like, this is my cub.
Yeah.
No,
not on my watch.
No, exactly. I'm nowhere near her. And if we can't have a conversation about things, and, I'm here doing work and, unpicking things and sorting stuff out, and we can't even, and I don't need you to say that you're wrong. I would just like to have a conversation, but that wasn't possible. You're not a safe person. I'm never going to let her go to your house ever. Kind of, what's the point? This is just going to be, and she's got 2 sets of grandparents through her dad. They divorced much earlier, so his parents. So she's got kind of 2 sets of grandparents. She doesn't lack in any regard, and I got peace back immediately. So for me, that was the right decision.
I had Chris on, I forget his second name, my brain's just gone blank, a couple of weeks ago, and he was talking about childhood trauma and like cutting parents out and like it's them, not you. And like sometimes you have to kind of make that decision because we're always told, be the bigger person, like all that kind of stuff.
Water.
Yeah, but sometimes being the bigger person is putting yourself first and going, actually, like, to protect my peace and my daughter's peace and my quality of life, I'm going to have to get rid of these people. And I think that looks the same for friendships too. It's nowhere near, obviously, it's apples and oranges, comparing abuse and narcissism to toxic friendships. But I think a lot of us, again, particularly women, collect friends as if they're sort of a badge of, I'm a really nice person. I've got loads of friends and they love me, and we were like this amazing big happy family, and often hold on to people who aren't actually valuable to us in any way. And I don't mean valuable in an exchange transactional perspective. I mean valuable in the sense of they nourish you in a way that you nourish them. And I think we collect these people and then wonder why we feel so hollow all the time.
Yeah.
I have very few friends, and I intentionally have very few friends because as I've gone on this my own healing journey, which was triggered by my divorce or my separation and now divorce, I've kind of very slowly, for lack of a less brutal word, culled people, because I'm like, you're rightly or wrongly, we were very good friends at one point and you're a gorgeous person, but where I am now is not where you are, and that's okay. And we don't need to have a falling out, we don't need to whatever, it's just we're not the same people anymore. And those people no longer being in my life has made me elevate so much higher than I would have done if I'd continued to support those relationships, because I felt like I needed them to be validated.
There is nothing that I get asked more about than this exact sort of scenario about friendships, about, how could someone do this to me? We've got all this history, or I did all of this for this person and I helped them and I opened up my heart, my home, everything to help them and got nothing back, and I've had it happen to me more than once. I'm a caring person, so are you. You would attract people. But to your point, I, again, and it was similar, triggered by divorce, but also timings of sort of, again, the great big swathe of time we had at home. It allowed me to kind of lose touch with people that you hadn't been able to before, because everything was so frenetic and busy, doing and being places and owning things and whatever. And I now have quite a small circle that I am completely myself around. Absolutely no filter. Never watch what I say. Don't worry that anyone's going to be, I don't know, filming me in a compromising position or something, or just looking awful, or wandering over bloody footprints in a villa. You know, like, I know that they're happy, and they're also really happy for me. Whatever's happening, relationship, book, things like that. They are really cheering.
That's the tell,
right? And
when their life isn't as going as well as yours, or vice versa, do they still support you?
Yeah.
that was a huge learning for me of like who supports you when they're not doing. I think it's very easy. My boyfriend said this to me actually. He goes, isn't it interesting how women find it so easy to support women who are doing less than them, but they find it really hard to support women who are doing better than them?
Well, there's a couple of things to that, but I know it happens to guys because I'm looking at Ollie as well. I had a guy, because I'm filming some questions tomorrow, and I had a guy message me saying, can you speak to why there are people that say that they support you? They watch, say he runs a gym chain. They watch every single story, say that they support you, say they're great, will never publicly like anything.
Ever.
Right.
I've had friends do that. Right. I have a friend who will like Rihanna's post, like fucking influencer, never support mine, ever. And it's like, why?
Yes, and they maybe even following, like, say, people really similarly in your space and actively engaging, but then and watch everything you're doing, but never like step out and support you.
Jealous.
Right. And it's this, so there's two things to jealousy is, if people, there are some people that purposefully only spend time with others that are less than, in their view, them.
It makes them feel better.
Generally narcissistic, they're very entitled, and so they're also very insecure because of that, and they makes them feel better, and they don't want, they need to sort of cultivate that. And then there are people that, sometimes I want to like hold some kindness here. Sometimes people are going through stuff we don't know about, and they just, in that moment, me going through divorce, I know triggered a lot of people, because some of them had really shit relationships and some of them are still in them, and so you are the beacon of.
I lost a lot of friends over that because I was the mirror.
Yeah,
and a lot of people are going, well, I can psychologically look at it. I'm not a psychiatrist, but I've done a lot of therapy enough to know that when people are treating you a certain way, it's typically because you are the kind of mirror to whatever they're going through. And I had the balls to leave.
Yes.
And they don't yet. So
there was that. And also some people are going through stuff and they just can't show it, maybe an illness or stress or mental health, other things. But then there's the other group that are like, all right, okay, so you want access to me either because you want something or you want to, or it's like something for you, but really you're waiting for me to fall. You're not trying to hang out with me, or you want something to be wrong with me. Like you want
the invites to the party, but you don't want invites to the wake.
Right, and you want there to be something wrong with me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so interesting, isn't it? It's funny though. You just said something there, which I think is like the best filter to put any kind of friendship through. Is can you be 100% unapologetically, to use your book title coming out in May?
Thank you.
Great plug. When are the pre-orders coming out?
They are actually sneakily. They are on Amazon right now. We are not announcing until the middle of November, but you can get it right now.
Unapologetic. Yeah, go and search it and start getting this pre-orders in, because as you guys know, pre-orders count to first week of sales, and I would like to hit the Sunday Times bestseller. So go and buy my book as well.
Yeah, that's 100% true. Then it's very important, pre-orders. So
very important. But I think a lot of people don't realize that that's the case, and therefore think, well, that like you said, like I've done all this thing for these people, and how could they do this to me? And what you don't realize, or perhaps don't have the balls to do, is you don't have to be friends with those people.
Please just don't. You know, if there is not a really, really valid reason, like, oh my God, sorry, I literally didn't see any of that day because I was somewhere else. I'm so happy for you, blah, blah, blah. If this person cannot cheer for you at all, they are not your friend, because they're cheering for a fucking stranger. Let's be honest. They have no affiliation to you. They don't know their kids or your story. Yeah. And I think the hardest thing is when you have been through really difficult times and they were able to be with you then, but then you have a new relationship, or you get a good piece of news, or you get something happen to you in your career, and you go to share it with them thinking, wow, they're going to be so thrilled, and you just see the look on their face, and you're like, oh my God,
why are you always talking about work?
Or just not happy for you at all, and then they make up a problem, and then and you just think, wow, okay, stay away from this. This is very toxic.
This is very in my. I'm not going to talk about it because I don't want to embarrass the person involved. But this is very my life right now.
Okay, right.
Very, very my life. So going through divorce is, as we both know, one of the probably most exhausting financially and emotionally experiences you can ever go through. Talk us through. I remember the way I dealt with it, it's funny because I knew I wanted to leave for at least 2 years beforehand. And I kept going, well, they've got kids and it's so horrible for the kids and da-da. And the catalyst for me I'll never forget this. It was the 14th of May. And I was with one of my friends. I remember it was the 14th of May because it was the first weekend the spas opened after COVID. And I was like, we're going to go to a spa and get shit-faced all day. So we went and did that. And it was through that interaction that all of this stuff came out. And my friend was like, you need to speak to him. And that conversation then led to another conversation that evening that then led to I want a divorce. And from then it was like a cycle of just horrendous for both of us, no doubt. Like I can't speak to his experience, but I know it was exhausting for both of us, of lawyers and fees and like fighting over stuff that's so fucking non-existent. Even like the co-parenting of the kids was just horrendous. And although that was one of the most, to be honest, worst times of my life, I'm very grateful for it, because I think it allowed me, you said something earlier which made me think about the thing that I talked to my coach about, which is coming back to source. Like it really put me back in source of like what actually matters. And so when it came to fighting over stupid shit like money, I was like, it doesn't matter. Like we can make this stuff back. Like it's fine.
Yeah. I mean, I think either my lawyer or another friend said to me, it's the war of attrition, and they were right. And you just have to work out ways. It was a very, very good lesson for me in boundaries, actually, that. Because as you know, you're just being prodded and poked, and they use tricks. The lawyers, Friday, 5 p.m. Yeah. Enjoy that. Yeah. You know, you get a letter of Friday, 5 p.m., horrible lawyer speak, nothing you can do about it. You've got to sit literally. Or when I was on holiday with my daughter, every day getting something through, you know, so, which is just, it's games. And you get
and the only ones that win are the lawyers.
Always. So it's something about a club. I think you can only really understand it when you've been through it. And it's a club none of us ever asked to join. But that being said, exactly to your point, I wouldn't change it. I wasn't happy in the marriage. I'd looked at, you know, things that I could try and do to help to save it. And in the journey of doing all of those things, found out a lot about me. And me was never going to fit back in that relationship. Doesn't make anybody wrong. But the process was horrendous. And like you say, I'm sure for everyone involved. I mean, we co-parent very well. We get on fine. But it was, you know, it's not a nice process. And as you say, going through all these made up scenarios, you've got to cover all these things off. But it made me show up for myself in a way that I hadn't before. And again, to your point, it made me, a really good male friend of mine who's very wealthy, he said it taught him how to lose money. Because you never have to give away that much money. No. Like you never have to deplete things in that way in any other regard in your life. And so I think, you become less attached, and you really do get into what the value of freedom, life, safety is. And I think in that process again led to me also perhaps finding it very hard to be around people I find quite vacuous. Yeah. So anyone that I see just taking or not kind of, honestly, people that probably aren't in any kind of servitude, I don't have a great deal of time for. Doesn't mean anyone's bad or right or wrong, but when I know how I've showed up for myself with literally nothing, to your point, like I don't even know if I can pay my VAT this month. Like truly, am I going to be able to pay this bill coming in? And then thankfully something lands at that moment. But I mean, really being up against it and showing up for myself, my daughter, time and time again. I find some conversations just sort of, I don't know, difficult to be with now. So
it's the radiator v drain.
Yeah, very much.
It's funny how I think when you're someone who probably deeply cares about people, which you clearly do, and also deeply curious about people, and you're therefore always the strong one that people come to like offload on and get advice from and all that kind of stuff, and you're the radiator for a lot of people, it can be very depleting for you, because quite often the energy that you expend in those relationships just gets taken and you don't get that same energy back. And I think that was one of the biggest lessons that I learned through my divorce, was a lot of these friends who I'd had around me were real energy takers, but they didn't call me when they knew that all this stuff was happening. They didn't come and see me. It was always like, they loved to be there when I was married to the Premiership footballer, but wasn't really happy to be there when I was divorcing them and going through the absolute and a lot of people don't know that, because I don't talk about the fact that my ex-husband was a football player, because I think it's fucking irrelevant. But a lot of people at the time were like, oh, you know, glam, like let's do whatever. I can promise you the football industry is definitely not glam, as I'm sure you know from working with working with a lot of your clients. Before we kind of wrap up, because I'm conscious of time, a lot of the people that you train, and we haven't even dug into even a snip of what I wanted to talk about with you, so we'll have to do some social content at some point. You obviously coach a lot of high performance athletes, like military executives, etc. What are some of the common denominators that all of these people that we are looking at from a social media perspective and going, oh my God, they're so successful, I want to be them? What are the things that they all have in common when it comes to not being able to perform at the level they think they should be performing at?
Imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone, but particularly very high performers, because as we sort of, no mistakes, though, circling back, have always been rewarded. I mean, their character, even their person they're told they should be at sports. We'll talk about that. Who gets paid? The agent. The agent makes a choice on where you go, what you do, who your sponsor is. They tell you what's right for you. There's probably some other people involved in what's right for them, also benefiting from that. You know, so you can have really, really great agents, by the way, but not always. Or there's certainly additional pressures in there. It's not just like I've signed for this club and I'm having a lifetime. Everyone knows what you earn. It's public. You know, so there's a huge amount of this pressure to supposedly be financially brilliant, fantastic at what you do, really resilient with regards to feedback, build and nurture.
Sharp every day, 100%.
Yeah, build and nurture relationships, develop yourself as a human, never make mistakes. And I just think there's this, but underneath all of that, the reason you're in this position is because you were rewarded and you have to stay really good. Now, when someone has an injury, I get a lot of people with after injury as well, because it's in your head. So let's just take football. Say you've had an injury and you've been out for a couple of months, big injury. There's 3 or 4 different guys waiting, literally with the shirt on, you know, on the pitch. The fans start really getting into them. They like them. They're developing. You're back. Are you going to approach, let's just say, a tackle in the same way, with the same velocity, knowing that you've now got a weakness? Because that could write you out for another period of time, or maybe be career ending for you. It's literally so stressful, actually. You know, yes, you get to do what you love, but the pressure to constantly be absolutely at the best, yes, you have support around you as well to do that, but not always. So there's, underneath all of that is imposter syndrome. It can be very ritualized, lots of OCD, things like that, to try and almost find a way to cultivate this additional value. So everyone is human, is what I want to say. And if you've grown up with, you know, things being pinned on the fridge, and that is changing probably your family's trajectory and other things, then it's a huge bout of imposter syndrome a lot of the time. It's
funny, the more successful I've become and the more successful people I've met, the more they all have imposter syndrome. Yeah. It's almost like every level you go up, you're like, wait, like, am I meant to be here? I'm not really sure I'm allowed to be here. I did the first talk I've ever done on imposter syndrome last week, and I fucked the whole thing up. And I said right at the end, I was like, by the way, guys, I feel like a total imposter here, ironically, because I've just done a talk on imposter syndrome that I've never done before, and I messed it up. And that was like that's what all the audience needed to hear, is like, even someone who's giving a talk to 1,000 people, still, like, we all look confident doing this, but actually even when like, no, this is terrible. And I think self-doubt isn't, imposter syndrome is not a syndrome, it's just self-doubt, and self-doubt makes you human. And I also think it keeps you competitive, because if you know the areas of your life where you don't feel 100% confident in yet, like, what an amazing opportunity and a little alarm bell to be like, there's growth that you can do there. Because no one feels like an imposter in something they know they're really good at. They feel like they're an imposter in the gap between what they're really good at and what they could be really good at, right?
Yeah, the imposter is like your guard of the comfort zone. So it wants to keep you in there, because it doesn't, you know, we don't yet know what's on the other side of change. It can't control it. It can't keep you safe. So actually, I always say it's a well-meaning friend that's gone wrong. It's trying to keep hold of you and trying to keep you safe. So if you're on the verge of making a big change, leaving a marriage, changing a job, whatever it might be, you're going to get like everything in the kitchen sink. Don't do this, you'll fail. When you were 6, you really fucked that up, and like, this won't work for you, and you've never been good at public speaking, and because you're about to break out of the comfort zone. So when your inner critic is the loudest, the imposter, quite possible you're about to make a big change. And also the thing I'd say is, ask me on a different day. Like, that is Sunday night doom scrolling, comparing yourself to other people, wondering why you're shit and they're not. Like, just check in and be like, oh, am I my best self right now? Probably not. Let's park that for the comparison curse until a day or two later.
What is something that you want to leave people with that you wish everyone knew?
I wish that everyone knew that you can live a life without shame, that it's absolutely possible to have a shameless life.
And what happens if you live a shameless life?
Honestly, I feel like I've got 2 completely different lives. I'm absolutely free. There is nothing that I'm afraid of. There's nothing I'm afraid of that you'll ask me. There's nothing I'm afraid of that anyone might find out about me. There is nothing that, and I live an unhinged life, like I say, there is nothing that I worry about, being made public or being judged on. That is what it's like not to have shame. And I had plenty of it, believe me. I'm not saying that flippantly, and I've done a lot of work through it. I used to self-harm. I'm a therapist that used to self-harm. How shameful. I was divorced. How shame, all of these things. And there is not 1 ounce of shame in me. And I feel like my life is just beginning.
I love that so much. And I wish people really do take that to heart, because I think we've been through very similar things. And my attitude pre all of this stuff was the same. It was like closed mindset. What if it goes wrong? Oh my God, I'd need to know exactly what the outcome is going to be to make that thing. And now I'm just like, do it for the plot. Like, why not? I'm going to be dead when I'm at some point anyway, so may as well just max it out. You either get a great outcome or a great story. Either way you win, right?
Yeah, I love that. That's very unapologetic.
Yeah, at perfect timing, unapologetic. You guys have to go and get the pre-order. Thank you so much, Annalie, for coming on. And I'm so sorry we're so short on time. We'll have to get you back on and we'll do some social content and like really pick into imposter syndrome and trauma, because I feel like that the world needs to hear your message with that.
I would love that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode. I absolutely love doing these podcasts, and I would be able to reach a hell of a lot more people if you like and subscribe. So thank you to all of you who have already liked and subscribed. And if you haven't, please subscribe and leave us a 5-star review so we can reach more people.